welcome to another episode of the MMA Lockcast. I'm your host, Manpreet, aka MMA Lock of the Night, and your boy on Twitter at MMALOT. And this week we're going over UFC Vegas 14, which was supposed to be headlined by Rafael dos Anjos and Islam Makhachev, but that fight has fallen through. And the shittiest part about that is I did all my research, did all my work, recorded the breakdown, and then went on Twitter and saw that it got canceled. So there's nothing worse than that. There's absolutely nothing worse than putting in the work that you need to break down a fight and getting a good feel for it too, and then not even being able to use the footage that you put together for yourself. I went like 11 or 12 minutes on that fucking fight. So maybe I'll just keep it in my back pocket for if they ever get scheduled again against each other, especially if they're scheduled in a 5-rounder, because I feel like that was a very important part of that card or that fight specifically. There's been a couple drop-offs this week. So we had Jeffrey Molina versus Eryk that got dropped. We had Kanako Murata. She was supposed to fight Lavinia Souza. That fight drops out, and now Murata's fighting Randa Markos. And then also, I believe, Brian Barberena got hospitalized for some reason. I'm not 100% sure why. And now that fight's off too. So we're really scrambling here on a fight card that a lot of people are saying that's already tough. Personally, I like it. I don't mind it a lot. I think there's some good spots here, some fun spots, but it's definitely dwindling. As of this moment, I believe the co-main event was supposed to be Abdul Razak Alhassan versus Khaos Williams, and they're saying they're looking for a replacement for Rafael dos Anjos. I'm not 100% sure if they'll be able to find one, on less than 6 or 7 days' notice here. But I will let you guys know if they do find a replacement for RDA or even for any other fighter. If there is a new fight that gets put together during this fight week, I will do a breakdown for that. I will link it in the description below. So if you are watching this podcast and it's like Wednesday, Thursday, or Friday, and we've already gotten the fight announced, just look in the link, look in the bio below. And I'll have a link for that breakdown, so you guys can hop on over there and check that out. But as of now, I'm going to be putting this podcast together with, the last fight being Razak Alhassan versus Khaos Williams, and whatever fights are already announced. So how many fights do we have that will be on this? We got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 10 fights that will be on this podcast. So hope that helps you guys out. I do have a good feel for some of the fights on here. I'm still pondering what my lock of the night play is going to be. But if you guys want to know what that is, the best place to catch that is the Patreon. I'll talk a little bit more about that later. But first and foremost, let's get into the betting recap of UFC Vegas 13, which went down this past weekend. And it was a great night. Outside of the one loss, which I'll go over first, so I had a parlay of Kevin Holland, which won the week before, Adrian Yanez, which won the same card as the Holland fight, and then I had Tanner Boser closing out a 2-unit parlay at -110. I got him at -253. I think by fight time he was like -350, something crazy, and I didn't agree with that line. The -250 line I thought was a little bit more on point, but even that, like, it turned out that Boser really, I fully expected him to go out there and throw a little bit more volume, and he didn't. Like, he literally was just content with kicking the lead leg, and not throwing enough on the feet. But I feel as though the amount of damage he was able to input on Andrei Arlovski's leg, not to mention the volume that he was throwing, was more than what Andrei Arlovski was able to throw there. Like, all Arlovski did was like blitz forward, throw a couple shots, and maybe one would land, but that happened way too far and few in between. I mean, there's just not enough work from Arlovski, in my opinion. And here's the funny part. Every single judge gave Tanner Boser a different round. So one judge gave him round 1, one judge gave him round 2, one judge gave him round 3. So none of the judges could agree on any of the rounds in that fight. So that just tells you how crazy of a fight that is. So that's -2 units, but that was the lowest point of the card. We had 1.5 units on Yan Xiaonan to go at -120 against Claudia Gadelha. That cashes. 2 units. Actually, you know what? I'll save the main event for last. The lock of the night play, we had 5 units at -191 on the under 1.5 of Markos Rogerio de Lima versus Alexander Romanov, and that went down. It was a little bit hairy at first. We saw a little bit more fight from De Lima than I expected we were, but I'm still sold on Romanov. King Kong is still my dude. And he went out there and forearm chokes De Lima with like 20 or 30 seconds left in the round. Solid performance from Romanov. We saw him kind of like fight back a little bit from a little bit of adversity, and do some solid work on the ground, just as we expected him to do once he got that fight there. So under 1.5 cashes, that's plus 2.62 units there. And then the main event, Dog of the Night play, I wish I went even one more unit deeper here. So I had 2 units at plus 206 for Glover Teixeira. That cashes for 4.12 units. And that had me ecstatic. That had me off the moon. And yeah, I did shit myself a little bit when Thiago Santos was able to hurt him in that 3rd round. But we saw the perseverance of Glover Teixeira come through, get the takedown on Thiago Santos and pull off that rear naked choke, I believe it was. But yeah, big win for Glover Teixeira, and he sets himself up pretty much for a title shot. If they're able to put that together, that'll be great. But all in all, we end plus 5.99 units for 57% ROI on the night. That gives us 3 straight winning events on events that include Lock of the Night plays. And the reason I say that is because we had Bellator 250 the other week, where I had 1 unit on Douglas Lima at plus 141. That was my only bet. So when I'm talking about my free and paid picks policy, it only has to do with events that have a Lock of the Night play on it, because sometimes Bellator, I'm not confident enough on making a Lock of the Night play, but I do think that there is value sometimes on the dogs as well, so I do want to take a shot there. But dating back to UFC 254, where we went plus 2.33 units with Alexander Volkovich, our Lock of the Night play, then UFC Vegas 12, where we slightly cashed, very, very small cash, but our Lock of the Night play on Sean Strickland came through, and then obviously this past weekend with plus 5.99 units at UFC Vegas 13. So I'm happy to be back on the paid picks. Just alluding to that, I kind of talked about a little bit earlier with the Patreon. The best way to get the picks, super cheap and very, very helpful for your boy, because it's getting me to my goal of being able to do this thing full time, leave the 9 to 5 so I can do the shit full time. $5 a month. Simply put, $5 a month. That's pretty much 4 events a month you guys are getting for $1.25 each. I think my math is right there. But you guys get early access to the breakdown. So as you'll see, the breakdowns you're about to see are already on the Patreon, because those guys get the perks. They get all my official picks, even when I'm charging the public, and they also get a best bets and prop article that I drop every Friday that just outlines the best bets and props. So we had a lot of goodies on there this past weekend, one of them being Max Griffin to win inside round 3. Came via nasty ear injury, but still cashed it nonetheless. And we also have a Discord group, which is very, very live. Shout out to everybody in the Discord channel. Live event banter. We try to break down any live event betting opportunities that we see. And then we also have a community picks page where a bunch of people are very, very active in, spotting college football plays or NFL football plays, whatever the hell it is. All I'm trying to say is that we got a great community on the Discord channel, which itself is adding value to the Patreon now too. So that's the best way to get onto that. Yeah, I love the Patreon. It's killing it now. We're roughly at 136 patrons. Insane. I'm very, very happy that we've managed to reach that number, but my goal is 200, 300, 400, 500. I want to get to a point where I can just solely, I don't have to worry about, locking down the consistent paycheck. As long as I got my patrons and my Patreon, I know I'll be good to go, and I can dedicate and devote my full attention to handicapping MMA for you guys, so that we're able to go out there and make some solid money. So once again, the link for the Patreon is in the link description below. Make sure you guys check that out. Support your boy. Simply put, $5 a month is the most value you'll ever get on your fucking money. That's all I gotta say. All right. That's really about it. We did the quick thoughts on the card. We did the betting breakdown. I did my Patreon plug, and that's about it. So let's get into the episode. Tony Gravely versus Geraldo de Freitas. We got minus 185 on Tony Gravely and plus 160 on de Freitas. And we have seen a little bit of action come in on Geraldo, as Tony Gravely actually opened as a minus 215 favorite, and now he drops about 20 cents. I'm actually off on that. That's 30 cents that he dropped. Trying to do my math real quick for you guys. So Tony Gravely, minus 185 favorite, and I think this is a solid spot for him. So let's go over him first. He was riding a 7-fight winning streak coming into the UFC, capped off with a Contender Series victory over Ray Rodriguez in a great fight. Kind of back and forth, but mainly Tony Gravely was handling that fight. He was having a lot of success on the ground. Ray Rodriguez was having some success on the feet until Tony Gravely decided to turn it on, and he lands a lot of big shots on Rodriguez, drops him, and wins via ground and pound. The Brett Johns fight, that was a very, very fun fight. It's like a grappler's delight. A ton of reversals, a ton of sweeps, and then obviously Brett Johns getting the victory via rear naked choke in the third round. And I believe that's the third time that Tony Gravely has ever lost via submission out of 4 losses total. 6 losses total. But let's just take this in. So his last 4 losses: Brett Johns, not bad. Patchy Mix, who's a very, very highly touted fighter, who just lost in the title fight to Juan Archuleta in Bellator. Manny Bermudez, very, very high-level jiu-jitsu guy that we all know about. Merab Dvalishvili. And then let's just go back to his even 5th one, Ricky Bandejas. Via rear naked choke. That one was a little bit weird. So that one was over 4 years ago, and it seems like he's made improvements in his grappling. Like he went takedown for takedown with Brett Johns, reversal for reversal pretty much too. But Brett Johns, we already know him. He's a very high level fighter, high level grappler. And, that was the first time Brett Johns had been taken down outside of a Aljamain Sterling fight for Brett Johns. So that's a big accomplishment for Tony Gravely as well. But I love his style. I love his style of coming forward pretty much all the time, seeking the takedown. His striking isn't bad either. He's pretty quick on the feet, has some power in his hands too. So I believe he's very trustable on the feet too. And that's where I think that Geraldo would have the slight advantage. Obviously, Gravely would have much more success if this fight was on the ground, as I don't think that Geraldo would be able to keep up with the level of not submissions, but like grappling and transitions and scrambles. I think Gravely would get the better of that. De Freitas has looked good, and there could have been an argument that he won that Chris Gutierrez fight, pretty much, making him 2-0 in the UFC. But here he is 1-1 coming into this fight, and he was actually supposed to fight Jack Shore, and in steps Tony Gravely, but pretty much the similar type of fighter. I think Jack Shore would probably have a little bit better top pressure, but I'd give the slight advantage in terms of striking between Gravely and Shore. I would give it to Gravely. So I think that's something that De Freitas has to worry about a little bit more coming into this fight. But I still like Gravely. I think he's a solid spot here. Minus 185 isn't too bad if you don't want to play the juice on him straight. I think he's very, very parlayable. I think De Freitas has some potential for sure, but I don't think that this is the fight for him to really go out there and show it. Gravely's been around for a while now too. He's 29 years old. He made his pro MMA debut back in 2015, and in 5 years, he's managed to accrue over 25 fights of experience. That's absolutely insane to me, that in 5 years that somebody can put together that many fights. But it really seemed like it was coming together for him before that Brett Johns fight. Again, that was a very close fight too. It was probably 1-1 going into that third round. And Brett Johns is a high-level guy at this weight class. So I think if he's able to go out there and pretty much be on par here with Brett Johns, he should go out there and do some work against Geraldo. I don't think Geraldo has great takedown defense. That's something that he does well himself too, though. He's good at mixing up his Muay Thai with the wrestling, so it kind of catches his opponents off guard at times. But sometimes he relies on it a little bit too much, like the Felipe Colares fight, where he was clearly getting the better of the stand-up, but I feel as though he thought he was in more danger the longer this fight stayed on the feet, but he was putting his hands together very, very well. Felipe had no answer for that, but he kept going for the takedowns and pretty much riding that top control. There were times where Felipe got the reversal and we saw him spend time on top, and that's where I think that Tony Gravely will have some success. I'd kind of be surprised if we saw Geraldo successfully complete takedowns on Gravely, but even if he does, I trust in Gravely's ability to create scramble positions and pull off either a reversal, get back to his feet, or get a takedown of his own. So I do like Gravely to win this fight. I think he wins it via decision. He has a ton of finishes on his record too, but De Freitas seems like a pretty durable opponent. So I would rather go with decision. I'm not sure if I would actually play either prop here in terms of inside the distance or by decision, but I do like Gravely. I think he's really, really fun to watch. A high-level scrambler, a high-level grappler as well too, and it's going to be very important for him to implement it in this fight against De Freitas. So once again, I'm going with Tony Gravely to win this fight via decision. Randa Markos versus Kanako, Murata. We got minus 130 on Bet DSI for Murata and plus 108 for Randa Markos. But it does seem like there's been a little bit of steamage coming on through Bet Online, where we got minus 163 for Murata and plus 143 for Randa Markos. So let's start off with Randa Markos, who's coming off a very unfortunate unfortunate loss over Mackenzie Dern. That one was a very tough one because leading up to that fight, all she could talk about was, I need to stay away from the grappling. It shouldn't be too hard for me to stay away from the grappling. And what the fuck does she do? We see Mackenzie Dern slip, I believe it is, and Randa Markos follows her to the feet and gets wrapped up. And then a couple minutes later, she gets armbarred. Man, I like speechless, absolutely speechless. Obviously, I didn't put any money on Randa Markos there, but like when people initiate so easily with Mackenzie Dern in the realm that she wants to get engaged in, it's ridiculous. Just like Hannah Cyphers, who, arguably had way more success than Randa Markos did have in that fight before she ended up falling Dern to the ground. Like, I don't know what the hell people are thinking when they're fighting Dern and willingly stepping into her guard and willingly engaging in the grappling realm. It's nothing but bad news if you decide so. And if you think you're going to go in there and out grapple my girl Mackenzie Dern, you're in for a long night, or even a short night and possibly a broken limb, or choked out unconscious. But we know what Randa Markos' game is like. She's always like middle tier level. Her record is 10-9-1, but she keeps exchanging wins and losses here and there where, she wins one, she loses one, she wins one, she loses one. And now she's lost 2 fights in a row now. So, hopefully this won't be a third straight because that might be her exit ticket from the UFC. But unfortunately for her, this is a very tough fight for her to go up against Kanako Murata, who, coming over from the Risen scene and also the Invictus scene, she's riding a very long win streak right now. She's on 2, 4, 6, 7 fight win streak. Her only loss came to Rin Nakai. If most people remember Rin Nakai, she was actually in the UFC before, but she was seemingly undersized for the weight class, in my opinion. But she did end up rear naked choking Murata in round 3. That fight was contested roughly around 126 pounds, and then we saw Murata drop down to 115 for the next couple fights. And most recently, she had 2 straight victories in Invicta, where she won via split decision. I thought she won. I'm not sure which judge ended up giving it to Emily Ducati. But Murata shows very solid wrestling skills. Even if you look at her IG, she's pretty much in the wrestling room all the time. With that said, she's going to obviously have to do some work with her hands if she wants to make it to the top of the division, as I don't believe that just wrestling will be enough for her to actually, crack the top 5 or top 10. Luckily for her here, Randa Markos isn't really anything special on the feet. She has this weird herky-jerky style where she allows her unorthodox nature in her striking to be her advantage rather than being a little bit more of a technical striker. She likes to switch stances a lot. She likes to throw kicks. She likes to, be on the outside. But then also we see poor fight IQ from her as well too, which leads me to believe that she might just be more than willing to go out there and go grapple for grapple against or takedown for takedown against Kanako Murata here. She's going to be in for a rude awakening there, as I believe that Murata will have an absolute, a solid jiu-jitsu advantage here and solid wrestling advantage too. We did see Ducati throw up a couple of submissions and maybe get a couple close ones against Murata in their fight. But I don't think we'll see Randa Markos get anywhere near close to completing any of these missions either. I like Murata here. Am I willing to play minus 160 though? Probably not. If you gave me closer to what that bet DSI line, which is around roughly minus 130, I'd be down with that. Minus 120, minus 130, I wouldn't mind putting a little bit of a play on Murata, who seems to show a very strong wrestling game and also solid a gas tank for over 5 rounds. Even though this one's scheduled for 3, we know that she can go out there and do it for 3 rounds if she needs to. She also has a solid jiu-jitsu game in terms of locking up chokes. She has an anaconda choke, a Von Flue choke, 2 Von Flue chokes, actually, and then a rear naked choke as well too, as well as some ground and pound finishes earlier in her career. I like her in the spot. I think she's going to be able to get Markos down at will. the parts where it's going to be on the feet. The activity would concern me a little bit of Randa Markos. However, I'm not worried about any power, any knockout power or anything coming from Randa Markos here. So just as like the other evening with Darren Elkins and Eduardo Garagori, that one was a sweat for as long as it was on the feet for anybody that had money on Darren Elkins there. This one, though, it's not going to be like that. Yeah, Murata is going to get her down. And yeah, Markos might be able to get back to her feet a couple times. But again, when it's on the feet, I don't think it's going to be much of a concern for Murata, as I do believe she will be able to continuously close the distance, continuously get her paws on Markos and drag this fight to the ground. So I'm going to go with Kanako Murata to win this fight via... I can see her pulling off a submission or decision, but I'll go with a decision to be on the safe side here. Depending on what the value is on Murata by submission, that might be worth a little bit of a poke. But I do like Murata to win this fight via decision. Luis Smolka versus Jose Quinonez. We got minus 140 on Smolka and plus 120 on El Teco. So let's start off with Luis Smolka, who is coming off a loss to Casey Kenny back in May. I believe that was the night I should have gone out there and picked Casey Kenny as my lock of the night play. However, I got a little bit too cute and tried to play something else. You know what? Just for the fun of this podcast, let's go back and see what I played as my lock of the night play for that card. Oh, yeah, it was the under 2.5 for Billy Quarantillo versus Spike Carlisle. Those guys went to war. Plenty of finishing opportunities, but nothing transpired. So we ended up getting an L there. But Casey Kenny went out there and did absolute work on Luis Smolka, who was a plus 225 underdog there. So I probably should have taken the juice at minus 285, knowing what Casey Kenny was capable of. I didn't waste too much time cashing on Casey Kenny afterwards against Haile Elatang. But again, this is about Luis Smolka, so let's get over to him. In that fight, I was kind of impressed with what we saw. But if you guys actually even go back to the Ryan McDonald fight, that's where you really start to see the evolution of Luis Smolka's game. In the Machnell and Sumadarji fights, you saw him kind of just trying to struggle to get the fight into the grappling realm, because we know how good his jiu-jitsu is and how crafty and successful he has been when he does implement his jiu-jitsu. Obviously, we did see him get submitted by Machnell, so maybe that one made him go out there and kind of change up his plan and start to approach fights differently. And the Casey Kenny fight wasn't going too bad for him. It was just a big shot from Casey Kenny with the counter to really rock Luis Smolka there and allowed him to get that position for the one-arm guillotine choke. And there wasn't much Luis Smolka could do in that situation after getting rocked. But leading up to that, like I said, he looked really good. He landed like 25 plus body shots within 2.5 minutes or 2 minutes of that fight with Kenny. Like, it was very, very impressive. And then the Ryan McDonald fight, we saw him just absolutely battering the body of Ryan McDonald. Not really even paying too much attention to the head, just waiting for the opportunity to switch from the body shots to the head shots. I like to compare it to like when I want to be really cheap on UFC 3 or UFC 4, whatever it is. Just keep going to the body, because more often than not, people just strictly block to the head. They think that it's more damaging to get hit to the head than it is to the body. But you just rip the body, and wait for the hands to come down and then start bringing those shots up top. And I love that style from Smolka. Like, if he's able to go out there and implement that and then force opponents to go out there and shoot on him, maybe he could counter with a perfectly timed guillotine or sprawling on these guys and trying to reverse them when they try to initiate the grappling exchanges. Quinonez, we know what his style is with jiu-jitsu tattooed across his chest, but I haven't been overly impressed with his jiu-jitsu game from what I've seen. His only win out of his last 3 was against a guy named Carlos Huachin, in a fight where Huachin just seemed like a guy that was content with just being the slow, plodding guy moving forward, looking for the big shots, whereas Quinonez seemed a little bit more comfortable on the feet, a lot of movement, a lot of in and out movement, a lot of kicks as well too, and also the size and reach disadvantage that Carlos Huachin was in. It was a lot for him to overcome there. Alberto Quinonez did a phenomenal job in terms of sticking and moving and getting out of the way of the big shots, and there wasn't really any point in that fight where he was really hurt or in trouble. He even hurt and dropped Carlos Huachin in that first round, and then in the next 2 rounds he kind of just cruises. I kind of understand why he decided to go that realm or that way, just due to the amount of power that Hawachin had in his hands. But against Nathaniel Wood and Sean O'Malley, who came with a little bit more of a diverse attack in the striking realm, it kind of like stumbled and completely baffled what Quinonez was able to do. He seemed like he was more caught up in seeing what his opponent was doing rather than implementing his own game, just like he did in the Carlos Hawachin fight. I expect him to maybe dwindle a little bit toward against Luis Smolka here in terms of what Smolka is going to be bringing with the hands and the redefined game that we're seeing from Smolka on the feet. And then when it gets to the ground, I kind of lean Luis Smolka. Like, as much as people want to big up Jose Quinonez's jiu-jitsu game just because he has a tattooed across his chest, doesn't mean the guy's immune to getting choked out. Like, he got choked out against Nathaniel Wood. He was getting close to getting choked out in plenty of other fights too. I'm not completely sold on Quinonez here. I think Luis Smolka is definitely the spot. At minus 140, though, I'm not 100% sure if I'd want to go out there and put money on Smolka. He did open up at minus 175, and a ton of money has come in on Quinonez to kind of get that line to shrink. But if it continues to shrink, like if you give me minus 110, like a pick 'em line here, I might have to put a little bit on Luis Smolka. Like, again, I'm liking what I'm seeing from him, his developments, especially in the striking game, and then just that style of just beating up the body, not really giving too much worries about the face, and then waiting for the face to open up to really rip those shots up there and take advantage. And I feel like Quinonez is a guy that can kind of get lulled into that game. Smolka isn't as slow and plodding as a Hawachin, so he does move a little bit more. He does push the pressure, and I feel like he'll do a good job of kind of like corralling Quinonez against the cage or into those corners and ripping shots to the body, and then eventually switching it up and going to the head. So I like Smolka here. I think he can get it done. But am I going to go out there and pay minus 140 on Smolka? Probably not. Give me a pick 'em line or give me minus 115, minus 120 or something, and I'd be a little bit more intrigued. But there's so much else on this card that I'm intrigued by that I don't know if I'm even going to bother risking the money on Smolka. But he should definitely win this fight, especially with this newer version that we've been seeing of him. So I'm going to go out there and pick Luis Smolka. I wouldn't even be surprised if he gets a finish too, maybe second round, third round submission, or even KO or a club and sub. I'm not 100% sure yet, but I wouldn't mind seeing what the inside the distance line for Luis Smolka looks like here. If we can get better than like plus 200 or something, that's probably worth the play in itself. But I do like Luis Smolka to win this fight. I'll say first or second round club and sub, or even just submission straight out. So, final prediction: Luis Smolka via finish in the first or second round. Alex Morono versus Rhys McKee. We got minus 200 on Alex Morono and plus 170 on Rhys McKee. Just of note, Morono did open at minus 240, and we have seen a little bit of money come in on Rhys McKee, and I completely understand as to why that is. So let's start off with the second-time UFC fighter Rhys McKee, who came in on somewhat short notice against Khamzat Chimaev. For everybody that remembers, Khamzat is the hottest shit in the UFC at the moment. He had that fight against John Phillips, absolutely ran through him, and then was demanding a fight shortly thereafter, and he got his wishes granted to him. So Rhys McKee steps in on short notice, and it's kind of like a hazing thing from when you wanted to join a fraternity back in college. I mean, you go out there, try to survive against Khamzat Chimaev, win, lose, or draw, you're in. And that's pretty much what happened to Rhys McKee here to get into the UFC. But the kid's not like half bad. Like, he's okay, and I think he could get some solid wins here in the UFC. And this is a solid matchup for him against Alex Morono. So the majority of his career, he has been fighting at lightweight. But the fight before the UFC, he went up to 170, and he knocked out his opponent within a minute. Obviously, he steps in against Khamzat Chimaev, does not go his way, but stylistically, a very, very difficult fight for him. I'm interested to know why exactly he moved up to welterweight, as I believe at 155, given his frame, he could give a lot of guys some issues, just as he did earlier in his career. Obviously, he's getting much older now. He's 25 years old, but he's 6'2" with a 78-inch reach. So even for welterweight, that's not a bad frame either. And it's definitely going to show in this fight against Alex Morono, who himself, I believe, is 5'11". Yeah, he's 5'11" with a 72-inch reach. So we're talking about a 6-inch reach advantage and roughly a 3-inch height advantage for Rhys McKee. And I think we'll definitely see that come to fruition in this fight. One thing with let's stick on McKee. He did show good boxing from the outside, good Muay Thai. I love how he uses his range. He could obviously get better and better with using it, but we have seen in the past that he does a good job of sticking his jab out there, making it nice, long, and crisp right down the middle, and busts up a lot of his opponent's noses, which is the mark of a good jab. If he can keep his feet moving and stay out of the range of the big shots of Alex Morono, he could definitely have a lot of success here, and I'd like that plus 170 tag on him. Going over to the great white Alex Morono, given that he's a black belt in jiu-jitsu, you wouldn't really be able to tell that given his last couple of fights. More often than not, he just is willing to go out there and stand and strike with some of these guys, and it's worked out for him in the last 3 out of 4 of his fights. Obviously, the Khaos Williams, not so much. He goes out there and gets absolutely dusted within 30 seconds. But before that, the Max Griffin fight had a solid first 2 rounds. Even in that second round, you can make a statement that he could go out there and get a 10-8. He threw a beautiful combination that ended with a head kick that dropped Max Griffin, followed up with a bunch of shots, even a spinning elbow that kind of hurt Max Griffin as well, too. A lot of damage in that second round, and you see the growing confidence in his striking as well. He is a black belt in jiu-jitsu. That's something that he likes to highly tout. I believe he even has a jiu-jitsu tattoo or a Gracie Baja tattoo on his bicep. But like I said, in the last 3 fights, before the Khaos Williams fight, he was really going out there and just trying to outstrike these guys. In the Kanan Song fight, we saw a lot more winging shots, a couple kicks here and there. He was the one pouring out on a little bit more than Kanan, but it wasn't a blowout by any measure. Then the Zach Otto fight, we saw him do the same thing, and he did a good job of dropping Otto and then following up with ground and pound and getting the back and just, not really sinking in the choke either. That didn't seem like something that was primarily on his mind. He just wanted to go out there and just ground and pound Zach. And then the Max Griffin fight, solid, good 2 first rounds, and then that third round, it seemed like it started to wane on him, and we saw Max Griffin take over, get the takedown, and do some solid damage from on top. But again, we have seen a little bit of a progression and improvement in Morono's hands, but I think going up against a guy like Rhys McKee, who in my opinion is a little bit more crisp on the feet and has a better understanding of the distance, McKee should do a good job. Obviously he has to be very much on point for this fight, but he should be able to do a good job of getting his combinations off and getting out of the way, fully utilizing that 6-inch reach advantage that he has here. I wouldn't be surprised to see Morono try to go out there and try to, get this fight to the ground and implement his jiu-jitsu to try to get over the striking discrepancy here. But McKee doesn't have horrible takedown defense. And let's take the Khamzat Chimaev fight out of our head. That guy's going to take down pretty much 95% of the guys that he faces. McKee on the regional scenes seemed like he had pretty good takedown defense. He does a good job of digging for underhooks and then spinning and pivoting out of the way and getting off the cage and then start to implement his striking once again. And I think that's where Morono might have some issues here. Morono, not the greatest takedown artist, but a really good jiu-jitsu artist, and that's where the discrepancy for these jiu-jitsu guys really comes in, because every MMA fight starts on the feet, and if they're not able to get it to the ground, they're going to have a hard time on the feet. But like I said earlier in the breakdown, Morono is showing a little bit more confidence in his hands, and obviously the work he's doing over there at Freitas MMA with Saif Saud is really paying off for him. This is a good test for him, though, to really see if, his striking is up there and his striking should continue to improve and the confidence should continue to improve. But I think that McKee might have him outstruck here. So I do like the plus 170 on McKee. I think that might be a dog play for me here. Morono hasn't really blown my hair back regarding anything in his career thus far. He went into that Khaos Williams fight as a minus 400 favorite and gets absolutely dusted. Khaos Williams obviously fighting later on in this card. But yeah, he should have had a good fight in there with Khaos Williams, but he just got caught with a huge shot. I'm not sure if McKee will be able to put him away. Most of McKee's victories have come via finish as well, so that's something to look forward to. His gas tank has looked good when he has gone to the third round, which hasn't been too often. But yeah, he's another guy that's definitely improving every single fight. Alex Morono, 30 years old. Rhys McKee has 5 years less on him. But he's been fighting for a while now, too. He turned pro in 2015. He made his first amateur fight in 2013. Alex Morono, on the other hand, turned pro in 2010 and had his first amateur fight in 2009. So experience-wise, obviously it goes towards Alex Morono, obviously being in the UFC as long as he has, had some tough fights, had some good moments. But Rhys McKee, I think, is still improving, and I think he has a solid edge in the striking department here. So it depends on, like, I believe in his chin. I think he should be able to withstand any of the shots coming from Morono's way, but I believe that most of those shots will be coming at the end of Morono's strikes, which may not have as much power or pop on them. So I do like McKee here. I'm not sure if he'll win by finish, though. The Morono is definitely durable. Khaos Williams has a ton of power, and I don't think that McKee has that type of power. But maybe in the second or third round, we'll see McKee turn it on a little bit more and possibly get a later finish. So I'll go at Rhys McKee to win this fight via third round finish, TKO probably, and I think he's a solid dog spot here. I think a lot of people are really shitting on McKee because of the Chimaev fight, but you kind of got to just take that fight out of consideration here, as I don't believe that Morono brings as much similar fighting style as Chimaev does. So once again, I'm going with Rhys McKee to win this fight via third round TKO. Ashley Yoder versus Miranda Granger. We got -115 on Yoder and -105 on Granger. And this fight has pretty much been at a pick-em this entire time, or at least for this past week. Yoder did open up as a -125 favorite, and we have seen the line pretty much, just hover around that pick-em line. So let's start off with Ashley Yoder, coming off 2 straight losses now, a split decision loss to Randa Markos, and then in her last time out at UFC 252, she lost a decision to Lavinia Souza. That was a fight where I actually picked Yoder to win. I thought she would do a good job of, doing her work on the feet, landing her kicks, landing her punches, keeping the distance. And if this fight did get into the grappling range, I thought she was slick enough off her back to be able to, make things a little bit dicier for Souza. But Souza did a good job on the feet. That's where it primarily played out, and I thought that that's where Yoder would have a solid advantage, given her reach and height and all that type of stuff. But, Souza did a good job of closing the distance consistently and landing some big shots. Good leg kicks as well, too. And that really was where Yoder seemed to a little bit frustrated. Didn't really know what to do in those situations. Here against Granger, I think she might have to deal with the same type of thing. Granger isn't the worst off of her back. And yes, she did get submitted by Amanda Lemos last time around. But I do think that Granger has decent jiu-jitsu. I think we'll definitely see a much stronger version of her than her showing against Amanda Lemos. And I primarily think that this fight is going to take place on the feet. And I kind of give the slight advantage to Miranda Granger, who showed in the fight against Hannah Goldie that, even when she's fighting a power puncher like Goldie, who wants to keep the fight on the feet, she does a good job of keeping her distance, doing her, having good kicks, having good punches, keeping the range, keeping moving, and dishing out damage for, over 15 minutes. Now, against Ashley Yoder, let's see what the heights are going to be. So we got 5'7" and 68-inch reach for Miranda Granger, 5'7" and 66.5-inch reach for Yoder. So, like my man Mike Goldberg says, virtually identical. But I think that Granger might have the advantage on the feet here. I think she's a little bit more busier on the feet. I think Yoder looks a little bit lost at times on the feet. But yeah, to say that I have a strong read on this fight, I'd be lying to you guys. I'm not 100% sure which way it's really going to go. I do lean the Granger side, as I do feel like I see a little bit more upside with her. She's 28, Yoder's 33. I do feel like Granger is definitely getting better on a fight-by-fight basis. Obviously, the Lemos fight didn't really show us much there, but I think Lemos is going to be a solid person in that division. So maybe that loss in the end is not going to be too bad on Granger's record. But that was the first loss in her career too, so that's something to keep in mind, that she's going to be bouncing back for her first ever loss against a girl who's 7-6. I've always liked Yoder. I thought she always had some potential, especially with her weird jiu-jitsu style, but it's never been super effective, and I don't think it's going to be effective here against Granger either. So I do think we see Granger keep this fight on the feet for the majority of it and do some work on the outside with some solid kicks, with her movement, and just kind of just shutting down Yoder. who knows what Yoder's been able to put together in the gym. She's working over there, I believe, at the Dan Henderson training facility, working with Sam Alvey and some of those guys over there. But I'm just not 100% sold on her and her progression and the improvements we see from her, because we don't see many on a fight-to-fight basis from Yoder. So here's hoping that Granger is better than what we've seen last time around. But yeah, you're not going to catch me betting on this fight at all. It's kind of like the Bevan Lewis and Trevin Giles fight from the other week, where I just don't have trust in either woman here. So I will go with Granger as for the sake of giving you guys a pick. But if you guys go out there and bet Granger and she loses, don't come back and shoot me in the face or anything like that. So once again, I'm going to go with Miranda Granger to win this fight via decision, as I believe that her striking should give her the edge here. Kay Hansen versus Cory McKenna. We got -220 on Kay Hansen, and we got +180 for the Dana White Contender Series alum Cory McKenna. So let's start off with Kay Hansen. She's coming into this fight with a 7-3 record. Definitely more tested when it comes to more quality opponents for Kay Hansen. So she makes no bones about it in terms of what her game plan is for pretty much every single fight. She wants to drag you down, and she wants to implement her high-level jiu-jitsu game. One thing she's really good at is when she goes for takedowns, she's good at taking the back of her opponents, and whether that's, trying to sink in the hooks and pull off a rear naked choke, or going for an armbar or triangle choke like she did against Jinh Frey, more often than not, she's quite successful with it. One advantage I think she'll have in this fight is I believe she'll be the stronger of the two, which I believe will play a big factor in this fight. Just like in the Jinh Frey fight, I thought that Frey was a much stronger fighter, but eventually the jiu-jitsu and the grappling of Kay Hansen caught up to her. Yeah, that first round was a little bit skeptical for Kay Hansen, and it shows that she's still trying to make improvements in the striking realm, but much better than what we've seen from earlier in her MMA career. She made her debut back in December of 2017, when she was pretty much 18 years old. Both women starting their MMA careers very, very young, and we're seeing the evolution of the game as we see every fight go by. Like I said, for Kay Hansen, she is going up against the higher level of competition. Erin Blanchfield, Sharon Jacobson, and even Jinh Frey in her last fight is a very, very solid opponent. But she's showing improvements every single fight. Like I said, I think she is going to be a huge wrecking machine when she really achieves her full potential, and even gets even stronger as well too. I believe this fight is taking place at 115 pounds. That's correct. But she can go up to 125 if needed. Yeah, she's a strong woman for sure, and her technical abilities on the ground really make her a tough go for most of her opponents. Cory McKenna, on the other hand, she's coming from the Cage Warrior scene, but she did spend most of her time and has spent most of her time over there at Team Alpha Male doing good work with Uriah Faber and the team over there. Her IG is pretty much full of pictures of her, in the Sacramento area training with high-level opponents and definitely working on her game every single day. She did have her most recent victory over Vanessa Demopoulos or in the Contender Series, where it just seemed like Vanessa was more than content with just laying on her back and trying to throw her up submissions. Whereas I feel like Kay Hansen will be a little bit more looking for reversals compared to just like clinging onto a triangle that's probably not going to happen, or an armbar attempt that's probably not going to happen. I feel like Kay Hansen is a much better jiu-jitsu player than Vanessa, especially when it comes to the MMA game. I do say that there is skeptical competition on Cory McKenna's record. The only loss she has on her record is against a girl named Nicole Desegni, I should say. And most people would remember her for losing to Mallory Martin on the Contender Series, I believe, last year or the year before that. Yeah, that was a close fight. It was a split decision, but I thought McCall did a lot better work on the feet, and that's what should have given her the decision. Whereas, Cory was trying to drag the fight to the ground, and McCall did a good job of getting back to her feet and then making her pay. Cory just seems to lack a little bit of strength, and I've seen in, obviously, her IG posts that she is trying to hit the weight. She's trying to get stronger, and as that is probably one of the weaker parts of her game. But that seems to be the part of her game that she wants to do, is like kind of go the same way about Kay Hansen, get her opponents down and try to do some damage from on top. Her striking looks like it could use a little bit of work. She does look a little bit stiff at times. I think she definitely excels when she's in the top position, when she's on the ground. But I think that's going to be a little bit hard for her to establish against a girl like Kay Hansen, who's quite active off of her back, really good with reversals, really good with getting back to her feet, and then obviously really good at ending up on top. So I think Cory McKenna is going to have a lot of trouble here trying to deal with the grappling of Kay Hansen, and I completely understand why she's a minus 220 favorite. And now, normally, a lot of people would be like, oh, why would you go out there and spend money or risk money on somewhat low level or entry level MMA fighters? But I think that there's a huge discrepancy here with Kay Hansen and Cory McKenna, especially when it comes to the jiu jitsu realm. If you look at Cory McKenna's IG as well too, and I'm taking a lot from IG just because I feel like there's a lot of content there for McKenna, obviously outside of her actual fight tape itself. But she is spending time with Sarah McMahon, which is something to keep in mind too. With that said, I don't think that McMahon is a high level grappler or high level jiu-jitsu player. Yeah, she's a high level wrestler, so maybe she's getting better work and trying to figure out how to get the fight to the ground. But that's where Kay Hansen wants it. So even if Cory goes out there and tries to go for a takedown, I'm sure she'd be happy with just pulling guard and kind of just being comfortable with being able to pull off a reversal or a sweep or pulling off a submission herself. Yeah, I'm on Kay Hansen here. I really like her in this spot. I feel like McKenna still has a lot of work to do, and I'm kind of surprised that Dana White was happy to sign her. We're used to wanting to see higher level of competition or a more persuasive performance from a fighter to get into the Contender Series. Like, it's kind of a joke that she actually got into the UFC off of that performance. Like, it was more of Vanessa Demopoulos just giving up, just lying on her back and letting McKenna have the top position, rain down some good shots from on top, and then obviously getting the better of the striking exchanges because Vanessa wanted pretty much nothing to do with that, going out there just doing fucking cartwheels. Like, what the hell was that? So yeah, I definitely think the experience advantage goes to Kay Hansen. The grappling advantage goes to Kay Hansen. The striking is a little bit of a wash, in my opinion. I've seen Cory have a little bit more success in the striking realm, but I'm not going to go out there and say that she has the much better striking than Kay here. In terms of camps, obviously Cory McKenna being at Team Alpha Male, and Kay Hansen does a lot of her work out of the 10th Planet Jiu-Jitsu school, I believe, in Fullerton. Yeah, I think it all balances out with Kay Hansen being the one that deserves to be the 2-1 favorite, and maybe even a bigger favorite too, because I feel like the strength is going to play a big factor here too. And Cory has kind of just been muscled to the ground at times as well. In one of her fights, where I think it was against Julia or Fanny Redmond, where she kind of just got twisted to the ground, like pushed almost to the ground. So I'm not the most impressed with Cory McKenna's takedown defense either. But then again, she more often than not, her opponents aren't trying to take her down. Vanessa Demopoulos is the closest one, but she was just happy to pull guard. So I think we'll see Kay Hansen pull off a submission here. I think she will have the better of the jiu-jitsu or even go out there and pull off a decision. But I think the jiu-jitsu is where the whole package is going to come together for Kay Hansen, and she should be able to get a submission victory here. Again, I'm more impressed with her going out there and arm-barring Jinyu Fry than her actually accepting this fight against Cory McKenna, because in my opinion, this is almost like a step back for Kay Hansen, but it is what it is. They're both roughly around the same age. They're both young women, but I do believe that Kay Hansen is the much better fighter at this point in time. Especially with the amount of experience she's been able to accrue over here on the Invicta scene compared to what Cory's been getting over there in the Cage Warrior scene. So I'm going with Kay Hansen to pull off a submission victory. I'm not 100% sure whether it's the first or second round, but I definitely do like Hansen to win this via submission. Eryk Anders versus Antonio Arroyo. We got minus 140 on Eryk Anders and plus 120 on Antonio Arroyo, and this line has steadily dropped since it actually came out. So minus 225 was the opener on Eryk Anders, and we've seen steady money come in on Antonio Arroyo here, and I absolutely agree with it. So let's start off on the your boy side with Eryk Anders. Last time out, he lost a decision to Krzysztof Jotko. Before that, you can make an argument that he lost that decision to Gerald Mearshart as well. Let's talk about the Jotko fight, though. We saw, we saw the flaws in Eryk Anders' game, and that's one thing that I've always tried to wrap my head around in terms of what makes Eryk Anders good. Yeah, I mean, we've never really gotten that answer. He managed to put together a streak where he was able to, headline a fight night against Lyoto Machida, and then he goes out there and loses a split decision in a fight where I believe he was a big favorite. He was minus 225 in his 10th ever fight. against Lyoto Machida. Say what you want about 2018 Lyoto Machida, but man, that in hindsight, that was probably a really, really bad spot. Then he goes out there, just barely beats Tim Williams, then goes on a 3-fight losing streak, goes out there and beats Vinicius Mojea and Gerald Mearshart, beats Mearshart, and then loses Krzysztof Jotko. So now he comes into the UFC. I believe he was 8-0 coming into the UFC. Not to mention coming off a big win over Brendan Allen, who's doing his own good things in the UFC now. And now he finds himself with a 13-5 record. So in the UFC alone, he's gone, 4-5? That's not impressive at all. The Jotko fight really showed off his lack of striking ability. Like, yeah, he's a big striker and likes to knock out guys and tries to look for those finishes, but when it comes down to the mechanics of it and the technicality of it, Krzysztof Jotko definitely exploited him there. That's where you saw Eryk Anders really start to push opponents up against the cage, try to overwhelm them with his strength and his athleticism, as I believe that those are his only good traits. He's explosive, he's athletic, he's strong, he's a big dude too. I believe he used to play football as well, so I'm sure he's taken that physicality from that game and bringing it over here to MMA. But it's not going to work against guys that are technically much better and are able to, dig under hooks and get off the cage. Krzysztof Jotko did a good job of staying away from him. He did get caught up in the cage at times, but he did a better job of getting off the cage, landing his strikes from distance, really making Eryk pay. And I think that Antonio Arroyo is absolutely capable of doing the same thing here. Now, my question with Arroyo is, if Eryk Anders decides to not just hold him up against the cage, but decides to take him down, how good is he at continuously getting up? I don't think Eryk Anders has the greatest top position, so I think Arroyo should be able to get back to his feet if he is taken down, and that was my concern in his fight against Andre Muniz, who seemed to have a lot of success with getting Arroyo down. Obviously, Muniz is a high-level jiu-jitsu guy, so you got to credit Arroyo for being able to stay out of most of those submissions. I do like Arroyo here, and I absolutely understand why the line is moving as much as it is. I may have missed the best line, but I still think that there's value on Arroyo at any plus money, as I believe as a overall mixed martial artist, I think the guy is much better. He's a big guy too, so Eryk Anders, let's talk about his size. He's 6'1" with a 75-inch reach, whereas Antonio Arroyo on the other end is 6'3" with a 73.5-inch reach. So we're talking about a guy that has a 2-inch height advantage and doesn't have as much of a reach as Eryk Anders, but I think the leg kicks are definitely going to play in favor of Antonio Arroyo here. The guy's a great striker. He holds his range well. He has great kicks, thudding kicks for sure. I think that would definitely give Eryk Anders trouble here, and I think he'll do just as good of a job as Krzysztof Jotko did in terms of keeping Eryk Anders off of him from the cage and then doing his work from distance. I do expect him to get taken down at least once or twice, but I do believe that I am confident enough in believing that Antonio Arroyo should be able to get back to his feet. So Arroyo is born in Brazil, but he actually fights out of Albuquerque, New Mexico, and you can actually see a tattoo on his forearm of that whatever it is, the sun, Albuquerque sun, whatever the fuck it is. Everybody knows what that logo is. And funny enough, even his topology page kind of looks like he's like Carlo Condit's bigger brother. It's fucking hilarious. But I like Arroyo in the spot. I think he has a solid chance of springing the upset. And we continue to see the decline of Eryk Anders. I think it was perfect time, perfect moment for him to go out there and get those 2 first wins that he got in the UFC against, who did he beat? Rafael Natal knocked him out in the first, and then he got a decision victory over Marcus Perez, and then he finds himself in the big time headlining a show against Lyoto Machida in Brazil, and obviously loses that fight. So all in all, I think Arroyo has all the chops to get this fight done. I like him to win this fight via decision. Again, it's going to be pertinent for him to keep the range, and even when Anders closes the distance, that he gets off the cage as soon as he can and start, landing his kicks, landing his punches, and just showing a better overall game than what Eryk Anders has been able to show as of late. So once again, final prediction, I got Antonio Arroyo via decision. Dontale Mayes versus Roque Martinez. We got -200 on Dontale Mayes and +170 on Roque Martinez. Let's start off with Roque Martinez, who's actually coming off a loss to Alexander Romanov, and he took that fight on super short notice. If most people remember, that was the week where Alexander Romanov, the week before, was actually supposed to fight Rogerio de Lima. De Lima comes down with the vid, and next week, the UFC is quickly able to get to Roque Martinez to come over, pass all of his COVID tests, and then go in there with Alexander Romanov. And I think people underestimated his durability, myself included. Going into that Romanov fight, it had been close to 10 years since Martinez had been stopped, excluding the elbow cut that he got, the cut on his forehead that he got from Crow Cop, which again, in my opinion, if you guys remember me breaking it down last time, I didn't think it was the worst cut out there. So, luckily for Crow Cop, he was able to pick up the victory there. But that wasn't a bad cut at all. Considering what we've seen in the past, that was not a bad cut. Anyway, so Romanov goes out there, arm triangle chokes him with not much time left in the second round. A lot of people expected him to go in there in the first, or Romanov to go in there in the first round and absolutely dust him. And yeah, he got him down. He slammed him a bunch of times, had a bunch of submission attempts as well too. But Roque Martinez did a good job of just staying out of pretty much everything, surviving pretty much. But he had no answer for what Romanov was throwing at him. This is a better fight for him in terms of being able to showcase what he's actually about. It's still tough to really get a read on how good, if at all, this guy is. He's 34 years old, so this is probably the peak he's going to be at. But his victories haven't really been the most impressive. Like his last three victories alone are over opponents with a combined record of 30 and 29. I mean, not to mention the last two wins that he has are over guys that were, 40 plus years old. In terms of his style, he doesn't seem like a guy that rushes his strikes or anything like that. He's more of a decision heavyweight type of guy. Yeah, he has a couple finishes on his record too, but he doesn't really do anything with too much emphasis. Doesn't seem to have crazy power either. So that's something to keep in keep in mind. He seems durable. He seems like he could take a punch. Seems like his belly could take a punch too. But in terms of like anything that really jumps out of the page, I mean, nothing crazy. And nothing crazy either for Dontale Mayes, who's coming off a loss to Rodrigo Nascimento, where in my opinion, he showed some pretty poor fight IQ. He got taken down in that first round, did a good job of getting back to his feet, avoiding any submissions. But in that second round, for some reason, he's hanging out and clinch with Nascimento for some goddamn reason. And then we see Nascimento pull off a beautiful trip, immediately gets the back and pulls off a rear naked choke. And what I find funny is actually, if you look in the background, Dana White literally just takes a seat as Nascimento starts to get this fight to the ground and pull off that rear naked choke. So good timing on Nascimento to wait for the boss to come in and then pull off that choke. But in terms of Mayes' game, he's mainly a striker, decent takedown defense, but that was definitely challenged in that Nascimento fight. I'm not 100% sure that Martinez is going to want to go out there and take this guy down either. I think this is mainly going to be a striking battle, and you got to say, just based on their physiques alone, that Dontale Mayes would probably win this by being able to be a little bit more agile, moving a little bit more, and throwing the better shots. But Martinez might be able to surprise some people here too. I am not at all in favor of playing Dontale Mayes in that minus 200 range, or worse than minus 200. If anything, I think the value side is on Martinez here. He might be able to surprise some people. And a lot of people want to shit on him strictly due to his physique. But, he has managed to accrue a record of 15-6-2 leading into this fight. And he's gone out there 23 times and come out victorious 15. So that is, that's definitely impressive for sure. I'm just not sure what kind of approach he's going to take in this fight with Mayes. Like, whether he wants to go for a takedown and try to lay on top of Mayes, he's definitely going to have a size and or at least a weight advantage. Last time around, Dontale Mayes weighed in at 241, and obviously, Martinez came in at 258. So not really 264, but definitely a big dude at 5'10" with a 72-inch reach. And then we got Mayes at 6'6" with the 81.5-inch reach. So obviously, Mayes is going to be much bigger in terms of the size, but in terms of the weight and how heavy somebody's going to be is probably going to be Martinez. So it will be a little bit more difficult for Martinez to close the distance and really get his shots off, as long as Mayes is able to stay consistent with his movement, keep his feet moving. and then just landed shots from outside. But I can't trust his fight IQ, especially considering how we did last time against Rodrigo Nascimento. Messing around in a position where Nascimento was able to convert it into a takedown and then pull off a submission. So yeah, I don't trust either guy here. I will lean with Mays just due to him being the much bigger guy size wise. I've seen him move well. Seen him defend enough takedowns. Obviously on the regional scene, not so much on the UFC scene. But yeah, in terms of a bet, I don't see it. Even the fight doesn't go to decision. I think actually think that line just dropped. So let's take a look at that real quick. Where is it? Dontale Mays. Fight doesn't go to decision is minus 385. This could absolutely go to the decision. I mean, with both guys playing it kind of safe, Roque Martinez not really being a crazy knockout artist, and Dontale Mays, just wanting to stay away as much as possible. Plus 265 for the fight goes to decision is not bad. I'm actually interested to see whether it's going to be 1.5 or 2.5. Because if it's 1.5, I would probably look at betting the over there, depending on what kind of number we get. So I do like Mays in this. Not so much to make a bet though. But I will keep my eye out definitely for the over 1.5 in this spot. So once again, I'm going to take Dontale Mays to win this fight via decision. Julian Marquez versus Safarov. We got minus 300 on the returning Julian Marquez and plus 250 on Safarov. And the reason I emphasize the returning Julian Marquez is he hasn't fought since the UFC still had that FS1 deal with Fox Sports. Specifically, he hasn't fought in close to 2.5 years when he fought Alessio Di Chirico, where he lost a very close split decision in July of 2018. And now here he is back against Safarov. I believe he's had to deal with a huge amount of injuries in that amount of time, and now he's finally back and ready to go. And I think this is a solid matchup for him to come back to. With that said, Safarov, on his best day, could potentially beat a guy like Marquez, who's coming back from such a long time off. That's what gives me a little bit of a hesitancy in terms of saying that, okay, Marquez should absolutely go out there and, win this fight and be deserving of the minus 300 price tag that they currently put on him. If this is Marquez off of like a 6-month layoff or something like that, I'm completely okay with that. And I'd probably say, okay, Marquez, first team, all lock of the night. You know what I mean? But not this time around. So Safarov's only win in the UFC has come against a guy named Nick Negamora. Okay, let me try this. Negamorianu. Whew, that was a tough one. But yeah, he beat him back in March of 2019, and then recently he came back in March of 2020 and lost to Rodolfo Vieira via arm triangle at UFC 248. Then again, pretty much everybody saw that coming. He was a plus 470 underdog going into that fight. So pretty much exactly what everybody thought happened. So in Saparbeg's UFC career, he's 1-4. He lost via punches and elbows to Gian Vellante in round 2, lost to Tyson Pedro via Kimura in round 1, beats Nick Negamorianu, and then loses to Rodolfo Vieira, and then now gets a returning Julian Marquez. So let's talk about what Saparbeg looks like when he actually wins. When he wins, he's able to go out there and pull off takedowns, able to kind of just lay on his opponent, land some good shots, maybe hold on to the cage a couple times because that's something that just habitually happens for him. He did get a point taken away from him in that Nick fight, but it did not matter at all as he was just absolutely laying it on that guy. That guy did not look like UFC level at all, even though he was 9-0. But if you just go back and watch that guy's tape, you see the type of opponents that he's going up to, and you can absolutely say that this guy is first team all can crusher. I mean, that's what could be for my man Nick. And I don't think we've seen him in the UFC since then, and I wouldn't be surprised if we never see him again either. But Safarov, it's tough, man. If he's not able to go out there and get his takedowns and really implement his top pressure, it gets a little bit dicey. And I can see Julian Marquez being successful in keeping this fight on the feet and getting his hands off and possibly even finishing Saparbeg in the second round. And that's the spot that I think I'm leaning here. I'm not the most confident in playing Julian Marquez here, and I probably will pass on this just due to the layoff. But Safarov, in my opinion, is not UFC level. Yeah, I don't know what more to say about the guy. Like, I think everybody pretty much has their thoughts on Safarov, and it's pretty much all the same. Like, the guy has decent stand up, nothing that will really blow your hair back or anything. But it's really him implementing his takedowns, him grinding you up against the cage, and him just riding you on top for him to be successful. But even that isn't like the greatest. That's the issue for him. He's not like an expert at it. Like he's just good enough to beat guys like a Nick. You know what I mean? He's not going to be able to do that to Julian Marquez, in my opinion. Who, in my opinion, has also fought much tougher competition, much tougher guys that are that would be able to take him down more than Saparbeg would, and he's been able to get back to his feet and really let his hands go. Like the Phil Hawes was a perfect fight for him to showcase that, where he's able to endure the grappling of Phil Hawes in that first round, then come back in the second round and just absolutely knock him out. And I could see that being the same thing here, where Safarov just tries to time and time again try to drag this fight to the ground, but Marquez does a good job of keeping the fight on the feet and pulling off a submission from there. I find it interesting also that fight was the Creco fight was at a catch weight, and this fight is at 185. Yeah, I don't know. I think Marquez is definitely a bigger middleweight as well, too. 6'2", 72-inch reach, 6'1", 78-inch reach for Safarov. But once I think we see them side by side, you'll definitely see the size advantage for Julian Marquez. He's a little bit more thickly built, hence the smaller reach. But I don't think Safarov has any crazy distance management where, that 6-inch reach advantage is really going to come to fruition or anything here. So I'm going to take Marquez to win this fight via TKO, probably second round or so. But yeah, it's tough to trust him coming after such a long layoff. Who knows how insane that the injuries or how much of an effect they actually have on him. Again, I do like the training camps he is out of too. Sometimes he's over there at Glory MMA with James Krause and Zach Cummings and those guys. And then sometimes he's over at Syndicate and Extreme Couture in Las Vegas. So I've seen Instagram pictures of him at both spots. So he's getting in that work. He's priming himself for his UFC return, and I think he'll get it done against Safarov. But you wouldn't catch me playing that minus 300 here on Marquez. Hopefully we get some people that are confident enough in betting on Safarov and we get a better line on Marquez. But outside of any like D-Gen parlay or anything like that, I don't think I'll have much action on Marquez here, but I do like him to win this fight via knockout. So final prediction, Julian Marquez, second round knockout. Abdul Razak Alhassan versus Khaos Williams. We got minus... where am I at? There we go. Minus 230 for Abdul Razak Alhassan and plus 190 for Khaos Williams. Just of note, Khaos Williams' actual name is Kalen Williams, but he's taken the Shogun Hua route here by changing his name pretty much to Khaos Williams. His nickname is the Ox Fighter, so I find that to be interesting. But let's start off with him. So he had a very successful UFC debut against Alex Morono, where he was... successful in getting the knockout within 30 seconds of his UFC debut. And that was pretty much his only path to victory in that fight. If most people remember, he was going into that fight as a plus 335 underdog, a very, very heavy underdog going into that fight, and for good reason, especially when you look at his tape. And even though he only has one loss on his record, through 11 fights, he only has one loss. The level of competition is a little bit sketchy. Jeremy Holloway is solid. Tony Hervey is a guy that I've been aware of on the regional scene, but there's a reason he was 17-19 going into that fight. Just an update on Tony Hervey's career. Now he sits at 17-20, so it is what it is there. But in terms of Khaos Williams' style, like Khaos pretty much encapsulates what this guy is all about, especially when it comes to his striking game. So he likes to go out there. He likes to throw winging hooks, leaving his chin completely out there. Probably one of the worst technical abilities I've ever seen from a fighter that has a record like this. But he's getting away with it. You know what I mean? He's clipping these guys. He's hurting these guys. He's intimidating these guys so that he's able to get the rest of his game going. We do see him going out there and pulling off takedowns and leg kicks and all that type of stuff. And there are certain little things and certain little exchanges that allow him to pull out some of these decision victories and, questionable fight IQ from his opponents as well too. But I truly feel like a guy that has crisp striking, strong striking, and heavy power is going to be the perfect kryptonite to this guy. And luckily for us as bettors, we're getting a solid price on Abdul Razak Alhassan, who, even though he's coming off a loss and a lot of people are thinking, oh, the blueprint's out there to beat this guy, Khaos Williams is not the guy that's going to go out there and implement that type of game plan to beat my guy Alhassan here. So I really like Alhassan in this spot. He has all the things that I'm looking for in a fighter to go out there and beat a guy like Khaos Williams, and I truly think that he's going to put out Khaos Williams as well too. I love the tight striking guard that Razak Alhassan has. He has the perfect type of stance and counter style to go out there and knock out a guy like Khaos Williams, who's going to try to lunge forward again with those strikes. And there's nothing that I've seen from his the Alex Morono fight that leads me to believe that he's tightened it up. I truly believe that he's still going to go out there and swing those shots and think that he's going to knock out Razak Alhassan and continue to ascend up the UFC rankings, and the popularity is just going to continue to rise. But he's going to be in for a rude awakening here. I even like Laureano Staropoli in this spot against him too when they were scheduled to fight back in March. Obviously, the COVID hit, and now here he is against Abdul Razak Alhassan, who has a very, very good shot of beating him. He's actually one of my hardest leans for this card. I really like Alhassan here. A little chalky. I don't mind that minus 230. But again, let's not forget that Khaos Williams closed at plus 335 against Alex Morono, and for good reason. So I don't see why, going out there and knocking out a guy within 27 seconds should allow you to be a closer favorite to a much tougher opponent in Alhassan. But I think that there's a ton of recency bias going into this, considering Alhassan's last loss. So let's go over that real quick. He went out there and he lost to Munir Lazez, who was making his UFC debut. And I believe in that fight, I'm completely lost on it now. In that fight, Munir Lazez was roughly a plus 250, plus 300 underdog himself. So, a lot of upsets in both of these last fights for both of these guys. But the style that Lazez brings to the UFC is not what Khaos Williams is about. Lazez uses his range very well, very good kicks, a lot of confidence in his knees as well too, uses the range very well, and his footwork is great too. Khaos Williams, on the other hand, you just watch some of these guys' fights and it's crazy. Like, he throws himself off of balance when he's throwing some of these strikes, and I think that's just absolute nuts, and that's not going to work against my guy Abdul here, who should be able to catch him with the cleaner, crisper shots. Even when Razak Alhassan is going out there and blitzing guys, he keeps his hooks nice and tight. He's not winging them from freaking, the concession stands. He has some technique behind it. He has some crispness to his strikes, and a ton of power behind it too. So I'm still fully aboard the Razak Alhassan train. There's a reason I didn't bet him against Munir Lazez last time around at minus 350, as I did feel like Lazez brought some good, some good tools to that fight, but obviously not enough for me to go out there and bet Lazez. But it was enough for me to pass on betting Razak at such heavy odds. But here, I love Alhassan all the way up to minus 300. I think he has a solid spot to go out here and finish Khaos. I believe this fight will be Khaos, that's for sure. And I'd be surprised if we saw Khaos actually land takedowns here against Razak. Yeah, we did see him start to give up takedowns later in the fight against Munir, but that was already after the point that I felt like Razak had accepted that he was going to get finished or beaten. He was a little bit more gassed out. He was a little bit more tired. I don't expect Khaos to, make it that far and be able to capitalize on Alhassan. And let's not forget the judo background of Alhassan too. And we haven't seen too much of it since he's just been using his hammers to get most of his victories. But it could come into play here if Khaos wants to go out there and try to play the clinch game. But I don't see this fight going past the first round. I do think that we'll see the sloppy striking techniques of Khaos Williams exploited here, and Abdul is the perfect guy to go out there and do that. So I like Abdul here. He's minus 230 currently. I fully expect that line to get steamed as the fight week progresses. By the time the public hears this breakdown, he's probably going to be even worse than minus 230. But I love him in the spot, and this is kind of the benefit of being on the Patreon, because my Patreon members are going to hear this as soon as I turn off this recording and post it straight to the Patreon, so they'll be able to exploit this line where I feel like there's a ton of value still on Razak. So I'm going with Abdul Razak Alhassan to win this fight via first round finish, and the Khaos Williams hype train to come to a screeching halt. But he should still be around to give us a couple good fights. Maybe throw him in there with another guy that likes to throw some winging hooks and not really give a shit too much about technique. But yeah, final prediction here. I'm going with Abdul Razak Alhassan Alhassan to win this fight via first round KO. And those are the breakdowns. Like I said, I had to put this episode together for a Monday drop, and obviously RDA and Makhachev falls out Sunday night. So we don't have an official main event on this card yet, but when that main event is announced, or at least if RDA gets a replacement, I will make sure that I do a breakdown for you guys, but that will have to be in a separate video, and I'll be sure to link it in the description below as well too. So if you're watching this on Thursday or Friday or whatever it is, and we already have main event announced, just look in the link below, or look in the description below. I'll have the link for that breakdown so you guys can enjoy that as well. But yeah, that's pretty much about it. Lastly, I'm always going to plug the Patreon because that's my main squeeze right now. Make sure you guys check that out. Link is in the description below. You get a ton of perks for a simple $5 a month. That's all I'm asking. All right. Good luck on your bets this evening or this weekend. What am I talking about this evening? Good luck on your bets this weekend. I'll see you guys on Friday on the odds stream for the final weigh-in with my guys Just Bleed, MMA Prediction Guru, and Cody Saftik. And then obviously on fight day, I do the MMA Lawcast live, 1 p.m. Eastern. I do 60 minutes. All comments, questions, everything is answered. You guys just hop in the chat and let's have some fucking fun. So I'll see you guys Friday, Saturday, and good luck with your bets this weekend.